Well, I'm really excited today to welcome Kim Walker Smith to the Beyond Sunday podcast. 2 days fresh off a trip to South Africa. How you
Yes,
feeling today, Kim?
I'm feeling good. A little tired, but otherwise good and happy to be here talking to you. So it's good.
Yeah, it's funny. You probably don't remember this, but I was going back in my archives. I've been podcasting for a long time now, and the last time I had you on this show was 2014. So that's like
Wow.
10 years ago. I'm looking at this right now, and this was when you released your Christmas record,
Yeah.
which that was 10 years ago, right? I'm just looking here. When
Yeah.
Christmas Comes.
Uh-huh. I was pregnant.
So, and
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot has happened in 10 years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
How many
That
how
that
many kids now?
yeah, well, two since that time. And yeah, my son I was pregnant with during that time, he is going to be turning 10 this year. So yeah, that his birthday's December. So that makes
Amazing.
sense. And I remember recording the vocals for When Christmas Comes in like summer, like, it's like August or July or something.
That's
And
weird,
I
huh?
was, yes, and I was just sweating to death. I just remember I'm singing Christmas songs about snow, and I am pregnant and sweating inside this studio while I'm trying to sing about Christmas and snowing. It was really challenging, actually.
That's hilarious. So you live in Montana, am I right?
Yes, yes, we've
Are
been here
you
4 years now.
okay? Are you from Montana, or you guys just decided like, hey, we love the outdoors and we're moving to Montana?
Well, it is very kind of random. I'm not from Montana. Oh, and I'm sorry, not quite 4 years. We're almost at that. Not quite that.
Okay.
We were both raised, my husband and I, in a tiny little farming community in Oregon. And we, living in California, my husband was always like, he moved to California because he married me. I was there, like this where Jesus culture, the ministry I was part of for so many years, like it's there. And he was like, one day we're leaving. And I was like, no, we're called to this place, like we're gonna be here. And 2020 hit, and my husband was like, I am done. I want out of here. And I didn't have an argument at that point. And we started driving around a bunch of other states because I said, I need to feel it. And so we would get into a state and it'd be like, well, it's really beautiful, but it doesn't feel right. And we got into Montana and it just felt right. And the culture here in Montana, all the farms, the farm people, the farm communities, the very small towns, very slow pace of life. This
Yeah.
is more what we were raised in. And so this is just more where we're comfortable and how we want to raise our kids. So that's really what brought us here, was just the culture we wanted to raise our family in. So
It's beautiful. We have good memories of being in Montana. We just visited. We went to Glacier National Park, which I don't know where in Montana
yeah,
you are, but
I'm
one of
I'm
our
more on
best
the
memories.
eastern side. Yeah.
Eastern side. Okay. That's
Yeah. But we
fantastic.
yeah, we just went there last September and we hiked in Glacier and it snowed on us in September, very typical of Montana. And that night we were sitting around the campfire and all of a sudden we look up and the northern lights were just so bright in the sky and we were
Wow.
like, we live in the most amazing state. This is incredible.
That's
Yeah, we
beautiful.
loved it. Yeah.
Well, Kim, I'd love to dive back a little into your history as a worship leader a little bit. Like, when did you first
Hmm.
realize that
Hmm.
you had a calling to worship ministry?
It's really funny. I don't I don't have a moment where I felt like God spoke to me and said, this is what you're called to do or anything like that. I have a memory actually of being on a tour with Jesus Culture, and I want to say I think it was a an outcry tour. And I was in a Q and A. We're in this big arena, and it was like a smaller group had come in for this. I don't know, they're like the VIP or something, and we're doing a Q and A. And someone asked me this question, like, when did you realize that you were called? Like, did God speak to you at some point? And it's funny because right when they asked me that, I suddenly had this, like, in thinking about it, I was like, looking around going, oh my gosh, I am doing what I created to do and called to do. Like, I had never really considered it or thought about it. In my mind, I worked as a banker and I processed loans when we were like 2 or 3 albums in with Jesus Culture. And in my mind, I was like,
what a fun job.
I know, right? I'm a little bit of a nerd. I like the numbers. And so I'm working as a banker and I just volunteered my free time to lead worship. And it was like, I just love doing this. I love the church. I love leading worship. If I got asked to lead on a Sunday, I'm like, yeah, schedule me. Like, oh, we're recording an album. Oh, cool. That's fun. Oh, they want us to come do worship at their event. I think I could take some vacation days and do that. That's so fun. And then it wasn't until Banning, who was the director of Jesus Culture, he was like, Kim, when are you going to and I was just following Jesus. It says in Proverbs, man makes his plans, but the Lord aligns his steps. And I feel like that was kind of my experience. Like, my eyes were just set on Jesus and following him. And in that process, he just aligned my steps. And I looked around one day and went, oh, this is what you planned for me. This is what you've called me to. And I wasn't really asking the question, what am I called to? What am I created for? I was just pursuing him and honestly trying to be responsible and pay my bills. Like, that was my job, what I did. And it wasn't until I'm there in that moment, in that arena, that I kind of looked around. I said, oh, I think that moment's right now. I just realized I'm doing it.
I don't know,
Here I am.
Kim, I don't know if you realize how profound that is, because young people talk a lot. What am I supposed to do? Like, what's my calling in life? Like, what am I supposed to chase after? What career path should I choose? And what you did was you set your eyes on Jesus and said, I'm going to pursue Jesus with my whole life. And I'm just going to be faithful with what's in front of me.
Yeah.
Working at the bank. Right. And then it was like, whoa, this discovery of this calling just sort of happened as you moved forward one step at a time closer to Jesus. That's brilliant.
Yeah. And I mean, the funny part was, like I said, I wasn't thinking about calling or anything like that. I was just thinking about just the process of following Jesus and doing a good job serving the people as a worship leader. That was my focus.
Yeah. So Kim, you've been doing this for 20 years now, leading worship. And what worship leading advice would you give to your young self? Like, if you could right now go back to when you just started leading worship and you could encourage young Kim Walker, what would you tell her?
Oh, there is something, and it's a little bit of a challenge to verbalize, but when I was younger and first starting out, when God gives you a gifting, whatever that is, you could be a very skilled engineer. Like, God has gifted you with a mind and hands, and that operates this way. Like, God gives different skills and abilities and giftings to each one of us. And I think that I thought the best thing that I could do is to just kind of hand it over to the church or to these leaders, to these people who were older, wiser, and surely they can tell me what to do with this. And I wasn't really taking the responsibility of understanding that God gave this gifting to me, and it's my responsibility to learn and to understand exactly what He wants me to do with it. And in that process, I have a lot of really incredible experiences, both in the church and with people. And I have some really painful experiences, like so many of us who have been in the church for a long time. And I learned some lessons in that process. And sometimes people, even in their best intentions, can still cause harm. And when you are someone with an incredible gift, if you're just giving that away and entrusting others to manage it, well, They will. There will be people who will do that. And again, not with any evil intent or anything like that. But I just wish I knew now what I wish I would have known that then. And what that looks like is, at the end of my life, when I'm standing before Jesus and I'm being held accountable with everything he gave me, what did you do with everything I entrusted to you? He's not going to go to those other people and ask them, what did Kim do? How did she do? He holds me responsible. And the other side of that is, if you are just handing it off and is entrusting your gift to other people to decide for you, if things go wrong, well, you can point a finger and blame and put it on them. Well, you said, you told me to do this, so if you're caught in something bad, or like, I hate this, or this doesn't feel good, or I don't like doing it this way, or whatever, well, you're just pointing a finger versus taking responsibility and ownership. So I think I didn't know, I didn't understand that. And now, being older and way down the road, I'm like, oh, this is something I think that a lot of young people should understand. Like, what God gives to you, you are responsible for that. And yes, seek wisdom and counsel and let people speak into your life that you trust, but understand that the decisions you make and the things, what you do with that gift, you have to take responsibility for that and do that and decide. And you can't point fingers and blame when things don't go right. We have to take ownership. So that, I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to verbalize,
Yeah.
but I feel that. I wish I could say that to the younger Kim.
Yeah, it's so good. Kim, what have you learned about navigating fame and popularity? And the reason I'm asking this is, not all of us listening are going to be popular artists or
Yeah.
songwriters or have a spotlight. But from a young age, I remember
Yeah.
this era of Jesus culture where you were thrust into this massive
Yes.
audience, this global
Yes.
stage.
Yeah.
And even on a micro level, anybody in ministry, and a worship leader in a local church, it's a public ministry where you're sort of famous in your church or in your community,
Yes.
right? Because you have a gift and people are experiencing the presence of God as you use your gift. And wow, there's just so much that can go wrong with that. And we see in the global church just leaders that have crumbled under the weight of that. But I
Yes.
wonder if you could share with us like what you've learned about navigating fame and popularity kind
Yeah.
of as a worship leader.
Yeah. I know that there are people who, like, I've met people who say, like, they dream of that. Like, they want the fame and the recognition and to be on the stage. And I am not that person, and I could never advise in that. And I know that there are even some of my peers that they do enjoy, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but just
Right.
they enjoy that and the responsibility that goes with it and all that stuff. Again, I have not really been that person. This isn't exactly what I thought I would be doing with my life. I have had to remind myself many times, God knew, and God knew what he would do with my life. And so he must have built inside of me what I need to manage this and walk through this and to sustain this. Because I do believe that God is faithful to his word, and what his word says, that he does provide for us everything that we need to accomplish what he has created us to do.
Yeah.
And so there are times that I do feel the weight of that and the pressure of that, of, there's the good side of, you're setting an example for people. You're like a mentor, leading, helping people, the ministry aspect of it all. And then the negative side is when people attack you, when people say really mean things online, when people critique you, when they criticize you, when they get mad at you. It's a kind of a crazy world to
Yep.
navigate. And in those moments, I'm a real person like everyone else. Like, it's painful. It's painful when
Right.
people say really mean things or attack you in certain ways or whatever it is, if I wasn't in this spotlight, those people would not even give a second thought to my life, my choices, what I sing or don't sing or anything else. So I do understand there is a lot of pressure in that. And the way that I have found to navigate that is, number one, I have to do everything to remain so closely connected to Jesus. I have to take my relationship with Jesus very seriously. I have to sacrifice and make time. I'm a mom with young kids. I get up very early, before my kids are up, sometimes before the sun. And it is a sacrifice to have time with Jesus, to
Yeah.
pray, to read my Bible, to just listen. I need that. I understand that the level and the depth of that connection determines a lot of things in my world. And the other part of it is staying really connected to my family, to my husband, to the people who are ready to burst my bubble when it gets too big, to the people who, when I'm hurt and I'm sad at a comment I saw and they're there to remind me, like, who is that? Do their words don't matter? You know, they're there to speak love and life over me and to help me in that moment. And I also remember, like, I don't I really do believe that my job as a worship leader is to serve the body of Christ. And I mean this in all honesty. It really is my joy to do that. And I love the people. I love the body of Christ. I love the church. I know the church is not without its flaws, and I know it's not perfect, but I still believe in that. And so the other thing that I like to do to kind of navigate that world is I like to try to stay connected to people. After leading worship, I talk to people. I don't go hide in a room somewhere. I don't be untouchable. I like when people can have a conversation with me and talk with me and see I am just a person like them and that I care. I love people. I love people because Jesus tells us to. You know, I'm genuine in that. And I do think when you talk about leaders who have crumbled under the pressure, I think this is the other part of, we have to have very sharp discernment of, you know, not every door that opens is God opening it and telling you to go through. There are
That's good.
doors that man will open, and man, you know, will want to promote you or push you into something because they see something awesome, incredible, you know, whatever it is. But not every door that opens is the Lord. And if you arrive at something before you are ready, you will crumble under that. Your internal world needs to be bigger than your external world. And your internal world needs to be able to sustain your external world. And so that's why that me staying so closely connected to Jesus and growing my relationship with him on a steady basis is so vital, because the moment that's failing, I will not be able to sustain this huge external world. And so I think when people do crumble under that, I think that's what has happened. Their internal world could no longer keep up with the external. And they probably, maybe they got promoted before God was really promoting them. Or maybe they
Wow.
walked through an open door that it wasn't the time to walk through. And so we really, really need sharp discernment in that.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody kind of put it so plainly and so directly, but we probably could unpack a whole podcast on how
Yeah.
to discern if an open door is God's open door or
Uh-huh.
man's open door. But I think it
Yep.
probably boils down to what you're saying is staying connected to the vine. Like the
Exactly.
closer that you are to Jesus, like the more you hear his voice, know what he's speaking to you, and you're in that daily relationship, the more you're going to realize this is what God's calling me to.
Yep.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That is the key right there.
Um, Kim, I know we're hitting some heavy topics here. This will lighten up eventually, but I wonder what excites you about, like, you've seen a lot of worship music and just the growth of kind of the worship music industry and artists and songs,
Hmm.
and like what excites you about kind of worship music today, and what maybe concerns you about some of the trends that you're noticing?
I think what excites me is with technology today and just the way that we can connect with people around the world in just from the comfort of your home. So where before, let's say that you want to grow as a songwriter, but maybe you don't have the finances to travel to and attend a songwriting camp where they're teaching skills for that. Well, there's a lot of opportunities online to from the comfort of your home and for perhaps for free or a smaller fee
Yep.
to learn and to grow. And so that is something exciting to me that um, thanks to technology and the ways of the world, we do have some better ways to connect with people, to grow, to learn, and to even excel in our gift. I was a part of an online kind of mentoring group called Worship Circle for many years. I just recently stepped out of that just to focus on all the other things happening in my world right now. But I loved it so much because oftentimes there are so many worship leaders and worship pastors who feel pretty lonely in their churches. Like they don't really have someone like mentoring them or speaking into their life. And Worship Circle provided this group where they're put in a small group with other worship leaders like them. And then they had a mentor, myself and other mentors who were there to like talk about different things they might be wrestling with or struggles on their team, or how do I handle, I'm going through this with one of my team members and I don't know what to do or how to communicate with them. And we would work through that. And I mean, how incredible is that we have the technology and a way of doing that. And a lot of the
Right.
people who attended that developed these long-standing friendships with other worship leaders in other states, and they still stay in touch, and it's incredible. So that's something I love about where we are right now. Something that concerns me is just very, very simply that the words worship music industry exists. I really struggle with that. Worship music has come into the industry and it has created some complications.
Right.
And I do feel like we really need to have some hard conversations about that. But I'm, and I'm trying to, I began talking about some of those things online and on social media, and I'm trying to be gentle and humble, and I'm not trying to point fingers, and nothing in me is like, you're doing it wrong or you're doing it wrong. I don't feel that. I just feel like, hey, I'm in this room and I'm looking around at my peers and I'm going, is anyone else a little uncomfortable? Is anyone else like, this doesn't feel quite right? And I don't think it's all terrible, but I feel like it's landed in a place that does not feel right. And I just don't like that there are entities, labels, most of which are or are owned by secular organizations that are literally reaping millions of dollars off of something that is sacred and
Wow.
holy and belongs to Jesus. I struggle with that. I mean, it just doesn't feel right. And so I'm like, can we just talk about it? And the other thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is the moment that worship music really made that shift into the industry, the other side of that was the industry trickled into the church and
Yes.
really affected the way we do Sunday mornings and the way we do worship at church. And
Yep.
that is also concerning to me. And it affected it. I mean, again, we could take a whole podcast to talk about that and the ways that it affected that. But the short way of answering your question is that is a huge concern for me. And there are elements to what's happening on a lot of Sunday mornings in a lot of churches that concern me, that I don't think are, and this again, I'm not trying to point a finger and say you're bad or you're wrong. Just things could be a little bit different. And I think they
Yeah.
should.
Yeah. It's complicated.
It is. It's very complicated.
It's not an easy answer, because there is kind of the artist side of things and creating art, but when that sort of bleeds into the Sunday experience, they're kind of like, you have to sort of keep those lines clear,
Yes.
I feel
Yes.
like. And
Yeah.
something that I've noticed, and you can comment on this if you'd like, but I feel like God is bringing us back to a place of more like empowering the body of Christ in worship rather than
Yes.
entertaining the body of
Yes.
Christ, right?
Yeah.
Because the last thing
Yeah.
we want is just for a gathered church to come together and to be entertained by the professionals, but
Right.
rather to see the body of Christ come together and just to be released in worship and empowered. Like, as a worship leader, I love it when the room is so loud that I don't have to like push
Yeah.
and I don't have to like lead as much, because these are the moments that we've dreamed about. It's
Yes.
not like the big
Yes.
stage and like how great we sound,
Yep.
but like the people of God just shouting his praise.
Yes,
So,
I have
anyway.
said many, many, many times, the most beautiful sound in a worship set is not what's coming from the stage. It's what's coming from the crowd, from the people, when they are actively worshiping God, singing out, speaking out, whatever it is. And I think that part of the industry trickling into the church and affecting our Sunday mornings and how we do worship is that it kind of sent a message to people that worship is for the talented, worship is for the skilled, and they became spectators versus participants. And I think that's part of the shift that you're saying is happening. I think we're starting to realize, like, no, worship, we're all called to worship. We're
That's
commanded
right.
actually biblically to worship, and we're created for worship. It is not about a talent. It is not about a skill. You don't have to be a great singer to worship God. And I think people are starting to realize that more. And also, I think more and more worship leaders are quite frankly getting bored with being entertainers on a Sunday morning. And I think they're realizing, like, this is not what I hoped it would be. And actually, I think I remember that maybe it is supposed to be an engaging time for all of us, unified in our response to Jesus and bringing him glory and bringing him worship. It makes it so much sweeter because that's what it's for and what it's meant to be. So, yeah, I hope we
Yeah.
just keep seeing more and more of that happening for sure.
Yeah. Kim, who's a worship leader or a singer that you say has influenced you the most?
Well, I mean, there's so many out there that I look up to. Darlene Check is definitely one of them. She's just a mama who's been in this for such a long time and has an incredible heart and really, you know, a good communicator of her heart and
Yep.
loves to come alongside the younger people. And she's never been one to try to, I've never got any kind of vibe from her like she's trying to fight to push the younger people down, like, no, I'm still here. Like, she's more like, yes, lift everybody up. Like, is this as a mother should be. It's incredible. But I will say the most influential and impactful worship leader ever on me was not a worship leader on a stage. It was my stepfather. And he passed away a few years ago, but he was the one who really taught me what it is to be a worshiper and how worship is not contained to our Sunday mornings. He worshiped in our living room every single morning, and he cried out to God, and he prayed, and he thanked God, and he would cry, and he would just have these incredible worship moments. And he wasn't on a stage. He wasn't, no one knows who he was, or whatever, but he was showing me what a real worshiper is and what worship should look like through his life. And that was probably my greatest teacher right there in the heart of worship and what it is.
Kim, I want to talk about your project Tremble. As I've been
Trample.
listening, Trample. I'm sorry, not
Trample.
Tremble.
Yes, I know.
Trample.
Yes, yes. I know. Well, the song Tremble, and my band has done this a few times. This was Tremble. And I'm like, no, Trample. And I was like, yeah, we didn't think about that. Tremble, trample. Yes, trample.
It's all right. We need both. We need to trample the
Yes.
enemy, but we also need to tremble in the presence of the
Yes.
Lord. So
Yes.
love that.
Yes.
But Kim, as I've been listening to this record, sometimes I'll listen to a project and it's kind of like there's a few songs that stand out and then others that kind of maybe a little forgettable or just kind of filling space. The more I listen to this record, the more I'm like, oh, I think this is my favorite song. Wait a second. No, like this one is my favorite song. Wait a second. Like the album kind of just is filled with just incredible declarations and prayers. Some of my favorites, like the glory, just the way that you've articulated, like just the sacredness of worship. I mean, that song even relates to what we just talked about,
Yes.
like I don't
Yep.
want to own what belongs, like the
That's
glory
why I wrote it.
is
Yep.
yours. Maybe just talk about that song a little bit, because it's kind of like, man, the glory of God is a sacred thing, and I don't want to come anywhere near that.
Yeah. So what we just talked about, that is exactly why I wrote that song. Like, I went into the songwriting session with Mia Fields and Rob Elmore, who produced the record. And I just said, this is what I'm seeing and what I'm recognizing, and this is what I feel about it. And I want to write a song that says just this, like that says, I don't want to own something that belongs to God. And quite frankly, I don't want the labels, the secular organizations, I don't want them owning it either. And there's a really bold lyric in the bridge that says, tear down every idol we have placed on every stage. And I understand, like, I mean, that could be me for people. We could idolize people. We could put people on pedestals, ministries, organizations. There's a lot of things that could be, but I just feel like if we truly are going to have it in our heart and we are going to say that, to God be all the glory, well, truly we should be able to, in humility, take a step back and look and go, is there anything that we have elevated on this stage, bringing glory to a name or an organization or a church or whatever it is? And so again, I really hope that my heart comes across, and I'm not trying to point any fingers or anything like that. I'm trying to, in my own life, be honest and vulnerable and be willing to say, hey, I've messed up in some of this. Like we've kind of gone down a path here. I think we need to take some steps back. And that song, I wrote it because I feel that so strongly. I don't want to own what belongs to God. And I truly do want him to have all the glory. And that is how it should be.
Yeah. Some of this is human nature, that like people, we like celebrities. We like our, heroes in a certain degree, right? So I don't know if that's ever going to be like completely eradicated, but I feel like what God is going to do is he's raising up voices like you, Kim, and other artists who have a little bit of a platform and influence and who are just going to redirect attention to what matters, not to bask in that attention, but like, how do we steward this so that Christ is truly enthroned? I had in college, I remember a leader that said something to me that really changed me. He said, David, do you want a name or do you want a voice? And the distinction of those two was like, well, my flesh kind of would like a name. Like, I'd like to get recognized. Like, I'd like to be known. But ultimately what I want is a voice, like John the Baptist crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. Like, I'd rather have a voice that makes way for Jesus than just having my own name known.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
it is a little bit of a fight, like you said, that, human nature, and we can't control people and how they may elevate or whatever, So it is challenging. It's more of, like what you're saying, a posture of our own heart that we have to manage and sort out.
Yes. Yeah. But back to the record, there's just so many great songs. As Long as I Have You, just the intimacy with Jesus kind of on that song, like especially when the bridge kicks in, just the way it's, you still are my king, like just that whole response is just beautiful. Mercy Seat, I could go on, but probably the most surprising song, I would say, is the last one. Well, not the last one, but
Uh-huh.
Mama. Like I want to hear about this. This
Yeah,
song just feels like out of left field a little bit. I'm sure it's not to you
I
because it
know. Yeah.
probably defines like most of your life right now. Like that's probably the
Yeah.
most like honest song that you've written. But
Yes.
like
Yes.
what a fun song. Talk to us about
Yeah.
like that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I know Mama it is kind of left field a little bit. Basically, the most sacred roles that I have before worship leader is wife and mother. And it is my greatest responsibility in my life to raise these babies that God gave to me. And I take it very seriously. And it is very hard being a parent right now in this world that we're in when everyone wants to try to tell you how to parent, how to raise your kids, or even when to have certain conversations. That's probably the hardest part for me is as a kid, for me personally, I went through abuse as a child, and innocence is robbed from you at a very young age, and it's very hard to navigate. It's very destructive. And my job as a parent now has kind of been to protect their innocence for as long as possible.
Yeah.
I know I have a responsibility to prepare them for the world that they live in. But for right now, they're just little children. When it comes to all of the different elements, the things of the world right now, the sexuality, all of that, I would never raise my children to hate anybody. But those conversations, even if let's just say, for example, they saw a same-sex couple and they asked about it. Obviously, they have a mom and a dad. Why does that kid have, and so they asked about it, just as simple like that. Well,
Right.
that provokes a conversation that I'm like, I don't feel that you're ready for that conversation because we're talking about sexual preference, all these things. I'm like, you don't even know those words. Like, this is not
Exactly.
a great example I can give of this as well is, my kids didn't know the word fat. They had never heard that word. We don't speak negatively about people's bodies. And my kids never gave a second thought to the way people look. Like they never commented on the way people look. And then one day they were playing with some other kids, and one of the little boys said, "Oh, my teacher is so fat. He's this big fat man." And my kids came to me and they said, "Mama, what does fat mean?" And I was a
Mm.
little taken back and I said, "Well, where did you hear that?" And, fat, it's not a cuss word. It's not, but I was really sad to have to explain to them this word being used in a negative way. And in that moment, it changed their perception of like, oh, so people say things like that and people comment on others' bodies. And like that wasn't even in their world. And in that moment, it's a simple thing, but it's like a little piece of their innocence gone. So, anyways, Mama just came from this place of it's really hard navigating raising children in this time and all the things in the world and billboards with scantily dressed women or whatever it is. I got little
Right.
boys. It's just a wild world. And so this song just came out of me one day when I was processing with the Lord my frustration and my kind of anger, like it is crazy out there and I'm just doing the best I can, and I'm so tired of everyone trying to tell me how it should be. Those are my kids. You don't get to tell me. And then this song just came out, and it's, I think, like, people who know me and know that I'm a mom, and it's probably one of my greatest joys to talk about it. They're like, "Well, yeah, I mean, she's a mom. Like, this song makes sense." I think where it's kind of left field is like it's on a worship album. Like,
Yep.
what is that? And I did mention online, it's kind of complicated, but the nature of how you release music, like the technical side, like where you release it, like what genre, all of that, it's complicated. And it would have been really complicated to try to separate those songs and release them somewhere else in a different genre. And in the end, I just went, you know what? I am 42 years old. I don't need to explain myself to people. They can love it or hate it. It is what it is. I'm a mama. I'm a worship leader. It's all going to live in the same place. That's who I am. It all lives in the same place right here. So in some ways it makes a lot of sense. And in other ways people are like, what? But the other part
Yep.
is it's brought a lot of non-Christians over to my music. We're getting messages and private messages of people who are not Christ followers, but love the song, found the song, heard it on whatever, and they come over and they're like, I listened to your other music. And they're asking about Jesus, which is
Wow.
incredible. I'm not here just to serve the body. I care about the lost too. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, well, it's a great song, and I
Thank
think
you.
it's got a little spunk, you know,
Yeah.
it's got a little
It's a
attitude,
fight
and
song.
even the arrangement and the
Yeah.
style, all of it is just like, I thought it was really surprising,
Yes.
but like really awesome at the same time. So,
Yeah. It's
um,
funny when I first would like tell people, well, I got this song coming out called Mama. And they're like, oh, everyone just
yeah, some
instantly thought
tender,
like sweet. And I
sweet.
said, oh, no, 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 it's not sweet. It's very spicy. I think it's fun. Like there's a little humor in it. There's a little tongue in
For
cheek
sure.
in there. I, but it's a fight song, but
I th-
appropriate.
I thought of my wife because she's a pretty quiet, behind the scenes kind of woman. But there are specific moments I can think of, like when her family was on the line or her kids were being
Yes.
attacked in some way,
That mama
and
bear just,
she shifts into Mama Bear.
yep.
And I remember the first time I experienced that, I was like, whoa, like I've never seen
Uh-huh.
this side of you, you know?
Yep.
So it's a
Well,
real
and that's
thing.
the reality. It's in all of us mamas. Like we may not all be as forward as I am, but I think
Yeah.
it's in all the mamas that mama bear, like the instinct
Yeah.
to protect our children.
Yeah. Well, Kim, last question. I've been asking my guests this, and it's just been kind of fun, just worship leader question. If you had to lead worship in 5 minutes, right? You had an audience to go lead worship with, and you could pick one song from your new record, okay?
Oh,
And
okay.
then one song that you had no part in writing, just a
Okay.
two-song worship set. What would it be? Putting you on the spot.
Oh boy. Well, it would probably be, gosh, that is so hard to pick. It'd probably be from my new album, it'd probably be Mercy Seat. I love that song so much. It's a confessional, it's very honest, it's
Yep.
repentant. And I kind of feel like we just need a little bit of that right now. And it means a lot to me. That song feels really personal. And then probably, one of my favorite songs to sing is Nothing Else. Cody Carnes' song, Nothing Else. I love the simplicity of that message. I just want you, God, and nothing else. And that's the cry of my heart. It's the cry of my heart in every worship set, every time. It's just you, Jesus. I'm here for Jesus. I want Jesus. I'm not trying to have a great worship set. I'm not trying to be without error. I'm not trying to do everything perfect. I'm literally just trying to be with Jesus in this moment. And so that's probably one of my absolute favorites that I love to put in the worship set.
Love that. All the worship leaders are taking notes right now to add that into their sets. But
Yeah.
Kim, this has been so fun. The album is not Tremble, it's Trample.
Yes.
So,
Trample.
also the song Tremble by, I think, Mosaic MSC is also
Yeah.
a great song.
It
But
is,
make
yeah.
sure you check out Trample by Kim Walker Smith. Kim, I really appreciate just your open heart, your honesty, like how real you are. And I feel like we covered
you.
some important topics today. And
Yeah.
I hope this just continues the conversation with worship leaders and artists and congregational worship, that we continue
Yeah.
just to face some of these challenging questions and approach
Yes.
them boldly and honestly. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.